In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 37. Andrew and Jerry say...
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everybody. I am Andrew Langer.
I have 60 seconds to respond.
Yes.
Good night, everyone. I'm Jerry Rogers.
We are very excited to talk about this. Obviously.
We have some breaking news, Andrew.
Okay.
And that is, we've discovered that John Fetterman,
yes, is
actually a rebuilt man, and a guy named Fetter built him.
Fetterman.
And so he's now Fetterman. And if we can find Mr. Fetter, we might be able to put him back together again.
It's funny you say that, because that does sound like something out of a science fiction film, because you would have that. They would call the new robot, they would call him John Fetterman.
John Fetterman.
And that's, I'm glad we're talking about this now. Obviously, Jerry, let me actually start here, which is a conversation I had last night. Obviously the trolls are out there, and I had somebody respond.
Under the bridge?
What was that?
I said, where? Under the bridge?
Under the bridge. Yes. Collecting tolls. I had somebody respond to my tweet in which, because the other thing about that Fetterman Oz debate that got me was that they continue to refer to Oz as Mr. Oz. They call me Mr. Oz. And somebody responded about saying something about Oz's record as a doctor. And
he's a heart surgeon.
Yes.
Regardless of his record.
Heart surgeon. That's
and
exactly
again,
right.
We've been conditioned. Dr. Jill Biden.
Right.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Yes.
Oh, there's Dr. Biden, the fake doctor.
Yes.
What gets me with Jill Biden is her degree is from some second-tier university. It's not like she made some discovery. It's her PhD's in what?
No, she's got a doctorate in education. It's not even a PhD.
Oh my goodness!
But remember, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg who said, "I wish Jill Biden could be my doctor," which is awesome. But my point in all of this is, someone online literally said, "Well, Winston Churchill had a stroke," as though comparing John Fetterman to Winston Churchill, which is, the original title of this episode was going to be Andrew and Jerry Go Through the Looking Glass, because Jerry and I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of days talking about this issue of the surreality within which one side seems to live. And as evidenced certainly by the reactions to the debate between Fetterman and Oz, and whether or not it's leftist outlets that completely ignore Fetterman stumbling over things and just his abysmal debate performance, or thinking that John Fetterman out and out won the debate. This is where we are again, sort of getting down to this crazy detached from reality world. Jerry asked me the question as we were talking about this episode, what the phrase "through the looking glass" means. And it's a good question. And the answer is very simple and straightforward. It is when you go through the looking glass, you are looking at the world in a way that is surreal or otherwise detached from reality.
What color are the trees in your world?
Well, yes, that's
it's bizarro world. Again, I understand that John Fetterman, Democrat Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, I understand he had a stroke. I understand that he has health issues. However, after the debate from earlier this week, his health, his response, as well as his positions, his changing positions, everything's up now. I mean, this man should not be a candidate for Senate. The Democrats could have put up someone else. For instance, Andrew, they could have put up Connor Lamb, who is a moderate Democrat, but instead they care more about power. Right. And for some reason, they decided that Fetterman can beat Oz. And what's going to happen, right, according to the Real Clear Politics projections, Pennsylvania is going to be a Republican hold rather than a Democrat pickup.
Well, and let's talk about this issue of Fetterman, and I want to start here, which is there are many different kinds of strokes, and there are many different aspects and impacts that a stroke can have on somebody. So merely having a stroke is not a prima facie detriment to someone holding elective office. That's not what Jerry and I are saying at all. But it is a situation in which it has become readily apparent and made readily apparent by this debate performance on Tuesday night that John Fetterman's stroke, right, makes him unfit to serve.
Fetterman I say this. Hold on. Unfit to serve.
Jerry, let me
the stroke.
Yes, but let me make this point, right? Because I've had this discussion with people in the medical world. Even if John Fetterman is able to process things in his mind properly, the fact that he can't get them out either in speaking or even on paper, and we can't prove that he's, there's this story, Jerry, that came out, right, that Fetterman did an interview over email.
Right.
And as though that's supposed to prove that he can type something out. Well, unless and until I watch John Fetterman actually type something coherent, I'm not convinced that he has that ability to transfer whatever may be in his brain that may be real and right into something that is made manifest in the world, which means that he has an inability to actually fundamentally do his job. It gets compounded by the fact that he won't release his medical records in this kind of a circumstance. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry.
Look, he's unfit to serve. That's the bottom line. The Democrats could have chosen someone to replace him. They did not. Dr. Oz is a bad candidate himself.
Right.
And so this could have been a pickup for Democrats. Instead, it's going to be a Republican hold.
Let me say this much, right? I mean, to be really plain, Fetterman lost the debate. It's not that Oz won the debate. I don't think Oz's debate performance was adequate. I don't think it was particularly strong. I don't think he is for all of his media background, I don't think he was a particularly polished candidate on the stump. And maybe that was part of it, is that he didn't feel like he needed to better prepare for this debate because.
And again, one thing, if I'm staffing Dr. Oz,
right,
the challenge is how do you make your point? How do you push your policies and not seem like you're picking on the disabled person?
Sure.
But I want to make this clear. John Fetterman is unfit to serve because of his health, but that's not why he should lose. He should lose because his ideas are wrong.
Well,
I think he's wrong on almost every single major issue.
But I think it's both, right? I mean, obviously,
yes, yeah. But the thing is that I don't want to hear from our friends on the left. If John Fetterman didn't have the stroke, he would have been a fantastic. No, he would not have been a fantastic.
And this is interesting because this gets into, I don't know if you've seen any of the interviews with people in the town that he was the mayor of, and
the town that he literally destroyed.
Yes. You talk to people who were subjected to. And listen, I'm not someone who knows enough about Pennsylvania politics to understand how he became lieutenant governor. I mean, that's astounding. That's astounding enough to me as it is. But the fact that this town that he was mayor of is in shambles because of the policies that he enacted.
Right. Here's how
that says it all.
Here's how he got elected, and we've talked about this. How does Brandon Scott in Baltimore get elected? How does Marilyn Mosby, state's attorney in Baltimore, get elected? How does Eric Adams in New York City get elected? When you're in a deep blue state, you could put up the worst candidate and still get elected. But that's
keeping in mind, was Eric Adams the worst candidate? I mean, Eric Adams is bad. There's no two ways about it. But was he the worst candidate among the Democrats? There were Democrats to the further to the left.
Right. I mean, but that tells you the state of the Democrat Party.
That's right.
But with Fetterman, though, Fetterman didn't fall forward. Fetterman had this, and again, look at him. He looks like a WWE wrestler. He looks like something out of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And he has this, and he dresses, he'll dress in a everyman way. He looks like everyman. He looks like someone who understands construction workers and oil workers and coal miners. He looks the part. The problem is that he might look like a coal miner, but in fact, his ideas, his policies are all cooked up in the faculty lounges at Harvard and Yale.
Yeah, I'm pulling this up. I'm gonna share this. Hold on, let me.
Andrew, good night.
Good night, everybody. Oh, here we go. I am pulling up because I wanted to find you. Jerry was talking about him looking, and we've talked about this before. Fetterman looking like a cartoon character. This is the Marvel supervillain Kingpin. And he looks remarkably familiar, doesn't he, Jerry? I mean, this is what we're talking about.
But you get my point, though. He looks like someone who everyday people could relate to.
Well, he's supposed to, but I don't. It's funny because I don't even think that. I mean, I think certainly the sweatshirt is an affectation. Right, I think if you and I started to
his whole persona is. Look. The fact of the matter is, he looks like a monster. I'm sorry to say, he looks like a monster, and he has this kind of. He could be a meth head, or he could be a guy who is working construction. Yes. He has that kind of look, and again, voters are shallow. Let's not romanticize the electorate. Voters are shallow. They vote for all kinds of strange reasons. Again, Wes Moore in Maryland is going to be elected governor because he's a kid from Baltimore who made it big, who lifted himself up, from his, by his bootstraps. It turns out he's not from Baltimore. He's a New Yorker. He's an elitist. He's rich. Again, but people will vote for the story anyway. So I think with Fetterman, the reason why he succeeded to this point is because he was successfully able to create this everyman image.
Sure. And then that sort of gets to my initial question. It used to be in America that folks wanted to, vote for people who looked the part. Not that Ronald Reagan didn't have great ideas, because of course he did, but Ronald Reagan looked presidential. George Bush looked presidential. So
Michael Dukakis did not.
And Michael Dukakis did not. Exactly. He got up on the tank and that was it. People could not see him in the role of commander in chief.
Yeah. Ross Perot. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish? It's out the barn now. Can I finish?
Larry, the Republicans have put a radioactive cockroach in my basement.
It's amazing to me. On my WBAL radio show, I had a caller yesterday.
You still have one of those, huh?
I do, yeah. Amazing.
Wow. Amazing.
Folks should go. In fact, I'm going to do a plug. Go to WBAL's website and check out the Jerry Rogers podcast. It is the best radio you'll hear in Maryland. But that's besides the point.
I'll agree with that.
What was I saying? So I had a caller last night, and we're arguing. He was argumentative, and I was having some fun with him.
Of course.
At one point, he says to me, "Oh, may I?" And I waited, and he started to talk, and I said, "May you what?" but however, when the call was done, I made this point, and I'll make this point to our listeners here, and that is, why are we arguing over politicians? They're beneath us. Every single one of them, Republican or Democrat, they are beneath us. They are lagging indicators. And I said this last night, and I'll say it again. We should stop naming bridges, courthouses, highways after politicians. Politicians are the problem. And again, look at the mess we're in. It's because of Joe Biden. Again, very specifically and directly, inflation, energy costs, border crisis, foreign policy crisis, Ukraine, Afghanistan. what's happening in the world, China, what's happening in the world is a direct result, not because of events, because of history, because of politics or policy out of our control. It's because Joe Biden is doing these things.
Well, listen, I am reminded of the poem by William Butler Yeats, The Second Coming. I haven't mentioned it on the podcast in a very long time.
A good Protestant from the Emerald Isle.
Yes. The Second Coming, the line, the best lack all conviction while the worst are filled with passionate intensity.
Yeah,
and this is the problem of where we are, is that we've created an environment in which the worst are promoted. They're allowed to serve. And again, I'm not someone who says that I hate Democrats and Republicans, or I hate both parties, because I think that's nonsensical.
I have to comment on this because you and I have friends in the punditry.
The pundit world, yes.
In the pundit world?
Yes. Sure.
Who make this ridiculous, I want to prove that I am a high-minded, so therefore, let me tell you how I hate both political parties.
Yes.
And how both parties are equally at fault, and both parties are equally extreme. No, not at all. The Democrat Party is a lunatic fringe party. And again, I don't want it to be. I've said this before. We've had these conversations. We are all better off if the Republican base, the Republican center of the party, is center right, and the Democrat base, the base of the party, is center left, and both are reasonable.
It gets back to this, but it gets back to this myth, and it is a myth that both parties.
It a myth? Is it a myth or a factoid?
Myth.
Is it a myth or a factoid?
It's a myth. It's a
myth. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Good
night, Andrew. Good night, everyone.
That both parties are governed by the extremes. See, the problem is that the left has become so extreme, and their positions have become so extreme, that what is considered and what was long considered to be center right is now, because of the way the media has been co-opted and is co-opted, is now defined as being an extreme position. Andrew. Right. So hold on for a second. I want to prove this point for a moment.
Well, this is the looking glass, right?
Yes,
Andrew,
exactly right.
Joe Biden talking to a TikTok influencer, a man, dressed as a woman,
who literally just transitioned, by the way. But go ahead.
A man dressed as a woman, and the president of the United States is taking counsel from this person on transgender issues, and the president then says that it is immoral and should be illegal for parents, for states, for anyone to intervene if a minor child wants to get gender reconstructive surgery or other kind of hormone procedures. This is the president saying that parents have no right to care for their children,
and this is why
this is insanity.
This is why the key moment going into 2024 happened this week, because you have Joe Biden doing what he did and having this meeting and making these statements. At the same time, you had Ron DeSantis making the salient point that in Florida we don't allow 15-year-olds to get tattoos, but we're going to allow them to have double mastectomies.
Yeah.
I mean, that sums it all up. But let me make, I want to prove this point about the redefinition of terms and how center right has now been labeled as extremist.
MAGA.
So this goes back to something in political science called the racial resentment index. And it's something that political science pollsters, now this is not pollsters, sometimes you'll do this with the major polling firms, but this is usually what's done in the context of academic polling, and they will ask questions of people, and they will ask a series of questions about things about taxes and government spending and social welfare programs and the concept of self-ownership and the ideas of the meritocracy, and this series of questions having to do with those things. If you believe in self-ownership, if you believe in the idea of making, pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps, if you believe in the meritocracy, if you believe that social welfare programs have done more damage to people than they've helped, all of those things, that there needs to be welfare reform, Well, that is emblematic of something called the racial resentment index. It means you have racial resentment, according to political scientists. And because we know that racial resentment is a form of racism, and racism is extremism, therefore, if you identify as being on this scale of racial resentment of things that were heretofore and are bedrock principles of a center-right movement, of a classical liberal approach to things, you're an extremist. That's the truth. And on the same time, it is now a bedrock principle of the Democratic Party, right? We've seen this again in polling. They believe they prefer socialism over capitalism. That's extreme. They want to have abortion on demand up till the moment of birth. That's extreme.
I'm a comment there because it's barbaric,
yes.
And it puts the United States, or puts the Democrat Party in a position where the entire civilized world doesn't do this.
Well, my point in saying this is that you look at these situations, and I defy you to tell me. Now there are people. This is not to say that there aren't people who have extreme positions on the right. There are, but the bedrock principles of the right are not extreme positions. The bedrock principles of the left now are extreme positions. And because you're because you are slightly to the right on the spectrum, they think that you're worse than Attila the Hun. What was it? Give it a prime example of this week, again from the mouth of Joe Biden. Jerry.
Yes.
The space between airline rows,
I know,
is now racist.
Yeah, everything is racist.
Everything is racist.
Look, Aaron Blake, who's a liberal progressive columnist for the Washington Post, did a piece a week ago, and the gist is the progressives, the media, their linchpin, their strategy for the 2022 midterms and going forward to the 2024 presidential is to make the electorate, make Americans believe that Republicans are a threat to democracy.
100%.
This has been their theme. So you see it in the J6, the January 6th committee. You see it with the president, his speech in Philadelphia. You see it constantly. But here's the twist: because the Democrats have been focused on abortion, critical race theory, transgendered issues, and gender identity, while ignoring. And again, Jerry, how could you say that? Well, the president gave a speech again several days ago where he said that if Democrats sweep the elections in 2022, the first piece of legislation that he'll send to Congress is to codify Roe v. Wade.
No. Hold on, time out for a second. Let's be really clear about this so everybody understands. The president is saying that the bill is going to codify Roe v. Wade.
Right.
The legislation, in fact, goes far beyond what was in Roe v. Wade. Go ahead, Jerry.
Right. And again, never mind the fact that the court has already ruled that the feds are neutral on this issue, and any such law would be challenged immediately in the courts. But that's not the point. The point is that they're talking about gender identity. They're talking about race constantly. They're talking about abortion, and what they're not talking about: inflation, energy, grocery bills, and these issues, the border crisis, crime. They're not talking about crime. And again, if you look at the top issues from polling of likely voters, it's the economy and crime. And so Aaron Blake makes this point. This liberal writer for the Washington Post says the twist is that independent voters, swing voters,
yes, instead
of viewing Republicans as a threat to democracy, they don't. They view Democrats as a threat to democracy.
Right.
And so their efforts have hit them now in the face, which is why, thank you, which is why, again, if you look at the Real Clear Politics projections, the Republicans will pick up 5 governorships, they will pick up 3 Senate seats, and pick up somewhere between 12 and 40 House seats. That's all on the Democrats. This is not because the Republicans have been putting forward a great agenda or a great campaign. They haven't. This is the Democrats self-destructing.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the here. We want the what
lunatic
do you want, Jerry?
fringe. Lunatic fringe.
No, but what do you want?
Real Clear Politics. There you go. So if you look at this,
what do you want me to look at? I can pull.
Well, go back for a second.
Go back,
and then just and go to the where here. So click on. See, this is Battle for the Senate. Right there.
Sorry, where am I?
Click on. See the gray box in Senate. Click on that.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't say. Then it tells you the projection is to pick up 3 seats.
Yes. Of course. I'm sorry.
And the House and then the governorships.
Yeah. Sorry. There we go. Battle for the Senate 2020. This is what I was looking for. It was covered up by my my Zoom text box there, Jerry. But yeah. So 6 toss-ups, right? Wisconsin. There's that whole build your own map thing.
Yeah, but if you look at this, I mean, Georgia likely going to be a pickup. I think. Yeah, let me
go back.
Well, the bottom line is that we were talking about how Democrats might pick up a seat or 2. The state of play right now is that Republicans might pick up a seat or 2. Right,
but I'm looking at this, right. So it's the open seat. What do you think? Listen, have you about this? Because I'm very curious as to what your thoughts are as to what may happen. We're going to talk, by the way, more about this next week. Next week, I think, Jerry, you and I should create maps. And come on here and sort of do our predictions. Next week is going to really be about the upcoming election. But I'm really interested in what you think is going to happen, in New Hampshire. Because I think that there's a real opportunity here.
Well, again, Rick Scott put out a roadmap to 55 seats.
Yeah,
and New Hampshire, he has New Hampshire being key to that. Look, if the wave continues, if this thing continues, you're going to see all kinds of unexpected changes. You're going to see House seats that we never thought would go red, and you'll see a couple Senate seats do the same. But again, there's 2 weeks left. All my friends on the GOP side, stop counting your chickens before they're hatched.
No, and get out there, by the way. Get out there and do what you need to do. I want to come back to something, again, sort of talking about the surreality of all of this and the denial of reality and the extremist positions that are out there. You and I chatted about this earlier this week, which was the exchange that, and I'm going to steal this from Chris Plant from WMAL, Corinne Jean-Pierre had talking about voter suppression and the issue of voter suppression and talking about the extraordinary turnout that had happened that is happening in Georgia.
Right.
Which if you all, I want to make sure you all remember this. Remember, was it last year? Is it only last year that Georgia enacted the piece of legislation, the election integrity legislation that they had?
Yeah.
And then there was this
Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta.
There was this extraordinary, and there has been this extraordinary reaction on the part of the leftist media. Again,
Jim Crow 2.0.
Jim Crow 2.0, which is exactly how it came up in the White House briefing. And somebody pointed out to Corinne Jean-Pierre, well, wait a minute, you're having record voter turnout. And she made this extraordinary statement, which I will say this once again, because a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Orwellian nature of what was happening here, or the Stalinist nature of what's happening here. I mean, you talk about the doublespeak. She said that you can have extraordinary voter turnout and voter suppression happening at the same time. Which is, as we decry politicians, and I've long said, to me, that the best definition of a politician is someone who can hold two divergent viewpoints and speak two divergent viewpoints simultaneously. This is emblematic of that, and shows you just how extreme they become. Oh yes, we had this extraordinary reaction to a straightforward piece of legislation in Georgia to protect election integrity.
Right.
It had the opposite impact, and you're still claiming that it's suppression.
And a couple of things to add on to that. Number one, in her response, she also was asked to give some specific details about the voter suppression. And she said, well, I'm not going to speak to the details.
No.
So here's the problem. The Democrats make these claims that there is voter suppression going on. And then you ask for evidence and they say, well, we just know what's happening. Right. But how do you know what's happening? I mean, even Ted Cruz recently had academics come. Well, he didn't have the majority. The Democrats had these academics come, and they all agreed that voter suppression is real. And then asked to give us examples. One academic said, well, in Texas, in your home state, there's voter suppression. And Ted Cruz was like, well, that's news to me. Can you give me examples? Well, no, it's because when they wrote the law, they had in their hearts, they wanted to suppress the vote. Right. So the vote, the law doesn't actually discriminate, doesn't create a circumstance for voter suppression, but because some members of the Texas legislature might have had a bad intent in their hearts, that counts as evidence of voter suppression. Yes, it does.
Wait, that's insanity. This was the justification that they used to challenge the immigration ban, the travel ban at the first weeks of the Trump administration in 2017. Well, it's not a Muslim ban per se, but we know that this was the intent in their hearts, and ultimately,
And here's the irony too, because we still hear lots about so-and-so, like in Arizona, Carrie Lake is a dangerous, a threat to democracy because she's an election denier.
Right.
Just this week, Hillary Clinton said that the right wing, the Republicans, are going to, quote, literally steal the 2024 presidential election. So she's a pre-denier. And then add insult to injury. This is the same Hillary Clinton who in 2016 said that Trump was illegitimate, that the election was stolen. And then again, we could go from now. We can go from now until the end of this podcast and not name every single media outlet and Democrat who said 2016 was stolen. So again, is questioning the integrity of an election, is that a threat to democracy? Because if it is, then my goodness, Hillary Clinton, Vice President Harris, Joe Biden, the entire, 77, Andrew, 77 Democrats, 77 elected members of Congress, Democrats, refused to go to the inaugural in 2017 because they believed the election was hacked.
Maryland's own Jamie Raskin.
Yes.
Remember?
On the J6 committee.
Under the J6 committee. Voted against certification of the Electoral College votes in 2016.
Yeah, and so did the chairman, Benny. What's his name? Benny Thompson.
Benny Thompson.
He also protested the Electoral College. Again, it's right in front of us.
And incidentally, that is going to be a major battleground, right? Depending on who wins in 2024 and what's the makeup of the House, what's the makeup of the Senate, and what's the makeup of the presidency. Because what's going to happen, Jerry, mark my words, is that the defense of the Electoral College is, and it's already starting to happen, is going to be folded up into this defense of democracy, right? This idea of, or more to the point, being anti-democracy.
You're right, but the irony, again, I use the word irony a lot because we talk about politics. The irony is that the Democrats are of two minds here. They want to defend the Electoral College, when it's being threatened from Republicans, whatever that means, but at the same time they want to disband get rid of the Electoral College.
I think by and large, and again, coming back to the extremist positions of today's Democratic Party, the idea that the Electoral College, and I'm going to say this, listen, by the way, I'm going to say this, the Electoral College is anti-democratic. That's the nature of it, because we're not a democracy. We're a republic, we're a democratic republic, or a Republican democracy, however you want to do it. We're not a pure democracy. So the Electoral College, in the same way that much of the Constitution is anti-democratic, and we'll get into what that means in a second, is there. But the point is that what they're going to do is they're going to fold in the defense of the Electoral College into the threats to democracy aspect of this, right? There's already been so much, already been so much groundwork laid about the again, a myth, the myth being perpetrated that the Electoral College is a holdover of racist white supremacy, or it's institutional racism. Let me be really clear about something. The entire structure of our country, the legal structure of our country, is dedicated to the precept that the founders were suspicious of democracy, and they were deeply.
Yes, but you have to clarify that they were suspicious of democracy because they worried about mob tyranny.
Right, because that's exactly right. That's what I was getting to. They were worried about mob tyranny in the end. Remember, right, as we talk about things like hate speech. Okay. I don't know why that did that, but it did.
I have no idea. I have no idea what happened.
My phone was listening to me for whatever reason. So what happens is that that unpopular speech does not need the protections of popular speech does not need the protections of the First Amendment. Popular ideas don't need the protection of the First Amendment. That's the whole point, is that if they're popular, if the majority likes them and agrees with them, they don't need to be protected by the Constitution. It's unpopular ideas, it's unpopular speech that need to be protected. This is the essence. So the majority cannot turn around and say, I don't like your political beliefs, therefore I'm going to outlaw them. I don't like your religious beliefs, therefore I'm going to outlaw them. That's democracy. Democracy, two wolves and a sheep deciding on what to have for dinner. And so as we get down to this battle over who's the threat to democracy, the very foundations of the Constitution, remember that guy, what is his name? Elie Mystal, the leftist pundit, they want to get rid of the Constitution. Ultimately, that's the goal, is they want to get rid of it.
Well, again, when Barack Obama, when Joe Biden and those in the White House now, when Democrats, progressives, the media, when they talk about we want transformation, take them seriously. I mean, again, we hear that a lot. The Hollywood celebrities who like to involve themselves in politics, they like transformational candidates, because what they really want is they want to transform, change, fundamentally change the United States. And here's the danger, and this is the problem with our public school system. And again, we just recently had these national tests. We know that our children can't read or write coming out of public schools, that the learning loss is catastrophic. But regardless, even before COVID and this learning loss, we know that we're not teaching proper history, civics to our young people. Right. And so there are young people who think that, yes, we need a pure democracy because that's good and moral. Right. And again, this isn't just the fault of public schools and Democrats. I mean, George W. Bush, you and I had this, this running conversation where George W. Bush, the reason why he failed in Iraq and ultimately in Afghanistan is because they were pushing democracy instead of pushing the rule of law, the private property rights, respect for minorities, religious liberty. Didn't push any of those items, pushed democracy. And what did democracy bring us in Afghanistan?
It brought us the Taliban.
Yes, right. Yeah. Our enemies, those who we fought to defeat, were actually elected. The people of Afghanistan voted for tyranny.
Yes. Yes.
And again, ultimately, that's why we have the Constitution, because it limits government. That's why we have rights that pre-exist government, pre-exist even the Constitution, but we've enumerated some of those rights. And that's why the Bill of Rights is so important. That's why the Electoral College is so important. Yeah. That's why these mechanisms to protect us from the mob. This is why on the left, these people who want, well, it's not fair. California has 50 million people, yet they only have 2 senators.
Right.
And they want to, again, because what they really want is tyranny.
Well, they want power. I mean, it all comes back to this: is that ultimately, this is the funny thing, right? When we talk about this, and and I know we'll have listeners on the left who will say, well, what about what about the Republican stance on abortion and body autonomy and the woman's right to choose? Well, remember, at least from our perspective here on the show, and I am going to speak for Jerry here for a second, we believe that there are two entities that are at work here, that there is the mother and then there is the child within that mother's womb, and that both have rights, and that those rights, when they come into conflict, well, this is how the law is supposed to weigh down. Anyway, so it's not just as simple as that. The point is that by and large, what we're talking about from the Democrats is they think, and the folks who want to be in charge of the Democratic Party especially, they think they know better than you do, that they can make better choices than you can, whether it is as big enough as to where to live and how to live specifically, to what kind of system you use to heat your home.
This is the Green New Deal.
What kind of car you drive?
Yes.
To what kind of straw you use? What kind of straw is made available to you? Let me tell you something real quick, Jerry.
Whether you could live in a single family home or a multi-family unit.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Where you live, how you live. I was at one of my favorite places in Washington, D.C. last Friday, Jerry, Ben's Chili Bowl.
Ben's Chili Bowl.
And I was very excited because for a long time, all Ben's had was those paper straws. And I don't know if they made a decision or it was just the right day, but maybe it was one of those soybean-based plastic straws. All I know is I got a legitimate straw that didn't fall apart after spending 5 minutes in my drink.
Yeah, and it's, again, just so we can clarify too. Look, I want to conserve the environment. I am an environmentalist. Right. But at the same time, when you demonize plastic and you make it scarce, and you make it more expensive, what you're also doing is having this trickle down impact on the cost of healthcare, on the cost of so many other products, because plastic is needed. Do you know what the number one material in a hospital surgical room is?
It's plastic.
It's plastic,
of course. But this is my point, Jerry, is that it's funny because you had the Biden administration, Joe Biden, the other day talking about this, and we made the joke about it earlier. The airline seats are racist issue. But what they're talking about is hidden fees. And what Joe Biden was trying to say is that these kinds of hidden fees on things, which aren't really hidden, disparately impact the poor. The reality is it's all of these other policies, whether or not it is raising the cost of energy, whether or not it is raising the cost of plastic, whether or not it is raising the cost. I want to take 30 seconds.
Maybe the airline doesn't have to go crazy and shrink down seats if we weren't making everything else for the airline industry so expensive.
That's right. And it's funny. I want to talk about this for a second. I want to talk about the science of petroleum real quick, my friend.
Excellent.
Because petroleum oil is not just used to make oil and gasoline. I mean, that's part of it, right? And part of the reason why gas is so damned expensive in America right now is because we are in America artificially limiting the amount of oil we are pumping out because of the policies of this administration.
Sure.
Because the Green New Deal is more important than anything else, including the war in Ukraine. But it doesn't just make gasoline for your cars. But when you break down petroleum, there are byproducts, and some of those byproducts are used to make plastic. And so if you no longer pump oil, plastic becomes more expensive.
Which means healthcare and health therapies become more expensive.
Right. And then also components of petroleum are used to make fertilizers. And if you're no longer pumping gas, fertilizer becomes more expensive, which means food becomes not just more expensive, but also more scarce, which has healthcare impacts.
And again, we hear from the left all the time that there are these food deserts. Well, if it's impossible for a grocery store to make a proper profit, we're going to see more.
Can I also
we're going to see more food deserts.
Can I carp about something else for a second? And I'm all of you out there. I blamed you on Twitter. Talking about making things more expensive. We've talked about crime. Jerry, one of my favorite things, you know that I am.
Is it a Wawa?
No, it's Wegmans.
Oh,
so Wegmans, have you ever gone? You've gone shopping at Wegmans, right?
I love Wegmans.
Okay,
of course. There's one right here, right? There's one 3 minutes from my house.
But Erica does the shopping in your house, right?
She does, and she mostly goes to Safeway usually.
Okay, well,
Wegmans is a after church on Sunday.
Okay,
let's go get some special stuff for brunch or for the week.
Well, I will tell you something just real quick. We are not paid here by Wegmans, though. If Wegmans wants to support us, they're welcome to. The Wegmans brand products, the no frills products on the shelves.
Yeah.
When I go to Wegmans, if I can buy a Wegmans brand, whatever, I will buy Wegmans brand. It will save you money, I guarantee it. The point is, Wegmans had, for a couple of years, they had a scan as you go app, which was great. So as I would go shopping at Wegmans,
oh yeah, sure, of course,
I would be packing my bags and I would be scanning everything in. Yeah, it was perfect. And all you do is you go to the self-checkout thing, you scan the barcode, it links up with your card, or actually it doesn't link up with your, links up with your account, you run your card, and you're done. Bada bing, bada boom. It was fantastic. Well, some of you people, and I'm looking at you people out there, some of you people were abusing this app and you were stealing too much, and Wegmans closed down the app. Did you know that?
Well, again, it's not just that, right? Erica was at Safeway. I talked about this on the radio, and the checkout person who's been there forever, and Erica has a friendship with her now, this clerk from Safeway, she was distraught, and Erica was, what's wrong? And people come in, mostly in this case, high school kids. The high school's right there. After school, they come in and they just steal.
Oh man!
And they walk out, and no one stops them. So this isn't just a Wegmans problem. This is look.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that for
Philadelphia, I mentioned Wawa to you. In Philadelphia, the Philadelphia metro area, Wawa had to close down 9 stores.
Right, that's right,
because they couldn't earn a profit any longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, what bothers me is that there's such economic ignorance. We don't understand.
But it's
not these, all these policies.
Yes, that's what
attacks on energy, on fossil fuels, and all the rest have this trickle down impact that raises the price significantly on average Americans.
But raises the price, but also hold on, because let's come back. I don't want to leave this point, because we've stumbled into something that's vitally important here, which again, you talk about the disparate impact on the poor and frankly minority populations, the issue of food deserts here, and the disconnect between the extreme positions of the left and what happens in the real world, right? You have the Marilyn Mosbys of the world, and I'm going to say this, the George Soros Open Society Foundation pushing prosecutors to no longer prosecute low-level theft crimes. So people know that they're no longer going to get prosecuted for shoplifting. So what happens is these stores are raided. Wawa then has to close the stores, or the whether it's the CVS also in Baltimore.
And New York City, they're closing Rite Aids.
Yeah, Rite Aid and Duane Reade are closing right and left. And so who is impacted? The people in these communities who are actually the good citizens who are doing these things.
Yeah, and years ago, someone very close to my family, a family member, voted enthusiastically for his second term, Barack Obama.
Yes.
And I said, why? Well, because he's charming, he's very intelligent. I think he's doing a good job and all the rest of it. And I said, well, you know that my family, we were paying about $800 a month on the private market for health insurance for a pretty good plan, about $800.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, that's very expensive. Well, thanks to Obamacare, that plan was canceled, and I'm now paying $3,600 a month.
Jesus.
I talked to someone just recently. I know that a lot of folks receive these subsidies and all the rest of it with Obamacare, but I talked to someone, again, a normal couple with kids, their premium is $5,000 a month.
Right. With what I'm assuming is a very high deductible.
With a high deductible.
Yeah,
I mean, we were paying $3,600 a month, and our deductible was
that's $60,000 a year. That is a college tuition.
Yeah.
Every year.
And so I said to this close family member, not immediate family, I'm like, so your vote, like you're voting based upon you're watching Good Morning America and this kind of feel good, he looks good in a suit kind of mantra. And the fact of the matter is he's bankrupting me.
Yes.
So my point is that mayors and governors and presidents and members of Congress can have a real either positive or negative impact. A lot of our libertarian friends say, well, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
Sure, of course
it matters
it does.
very personally.
Okay, you know something, and that's a good point, because I don't know if we've gotten into this situation. And I'm going to call him out directly on this. Because
good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. I'm going to pull that up in a second. Next time you're talking, I'm going to pull up the Animaniacs. By the way, great conversation I had with Jerry yesterday. Because when Fetterman said that, it reminded me of Yakko Warner from the Animaniacs. I asked Jerry, I said, Jerry, have you ever watched the Animaniacs in the 90s? And Jerry says, no, Andrew, I'd gotten married and was having kids
in the 90s. Yeah.
In the 90s. So
what year were you married?
I was married in 98.
All right. So I was married in 93.
But my wife and I would watch the Animaniacs, on Saturday mornings when she was in med school. So, but my point is this, though. I got very distraught when I heard an interview that Boyd Rutherford did on a certain Baltimore radio station, which I will not name. And Boyd Rutherford, who's the lieutenant governor of Maryland, for those of you who don't know,
nobody knows because he hasn't done much, and
that gets me.
And Hogan hasn't done
apparently
much.
Boyd Rutherford was like friends with a bunch of people that I'm friends with, part of my Ben's Chili Bowl crowd, which I had no idea. Anyway, my point is that Boyd Rutherford was asked directly about the issue of Dan Cox. Now, setting aside
Dan Cox is the Republican nominee for governor in Maryland,
and who may do better than expected given the political climate, but it's not going to beat Wes Moore. In a situation in which Larry Hogan did 0 during the primary, you have Boyd Rutherford going on WBAL and saying, no, I'm not supporting Dan Cox. I think he said, I'm not speaking for the governor, who the hell knows, but he said, there are certain, what was it? It was not policy issues, but it had to do with issues of approach and style. It was essentially saying that because there was a moral issue at work with who Dan Cox was, that he couldn't support Dan Cox. And it's like, it is astounding to me how otherwise rational people will choose the flash over substance, and make
and just be dishonest about it, because here are the facts. The facts is Dan Cox, a married man.
Hey, Jerry, I'm sorry, Dan Cox, a married man. Sit back a little bit. You've somehow gotten, there you go. Your camera went out of focus. There we go. Dan Cox, a married man.
Some facts about Dan Cox are he's married, has a large family. He supports his family. He's an attorney. He questioned the 2020 election. He organized a bus for some of his constituents to go to the rally, not to the mob attack on the Capitol, but the rally. And he has questioned the 2020 election. But however, on education, on taxes, on economic growth, on how to deal with regulations and entrepreneurs, how to deal with crime and policing, he is absolutely center right and correct on those issues.
Yeah.
He also would be a check on a very progressive and increasingly progressive radical state legislature. Remember, Democrats in the state of Maryland really have it's one party rule other than Larry Hogan. And so again, what is this moral issue? I'll tell you what it is.
It really is one party rule, period. Go ahead.
Right. But the moral issue is that he questioned the 2020 election, that he's pro-Trump. The fact that Dan Cox is pro-Trump, that's why Rutherford and why Hogan won't support him. But here's the problem. And of course, Trump is this evil person because he questioned the 2020 election.
Well, remember, Trump was an evil person before he questioned the
but this is the reason Hogan gives and Rutherford gives. But the fact of the matter is, Wes Moore was just endorsed, did a virtual event with Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Hillary Clinton is an election denier and a pre-denier. Someone called my radio show and said, well, Hillary Clinton didn't attack the Capitol. Well, okay, I'll give you that. I'm not so sure if Donald Trump attacked the Capitol either, but regardless,
right.
We seem to forget, we memory hold that in 2017, radical protesters, Antifa, and others came to Washington, D.C. with the purpose of stopping the swearing-in ceremony.
Absolutely.
There was rioting. There was over 200 arrests. Andrew, get a load of this.
I remember this.
3,000 law enforcement officers from around the region, as far as New Jersey, had to come to restore order, and 5,000 National Guardsmen had to come to Washington, D.C. That was... right, that was an attack on our democracy, but no one talks about it. But my point is,
just the opposite, right, Jerry? Because there was all kinds of criticism levied at the Trump administration for bringing in, and for congressional Republicans for bringing in the National Guard to secure the Capitol.
Again, I want to be very clear about this. Yeah. And again, go back, trust but verify. The purpose of those protests was to stop the swearing in.
Right.
All right. Now, so what's the difference between, let's take the J6 committee at its word. They're concerned that the rioters on January 6, 2021, they wanted to stop the seating of the Electoral College. They wanted to disrupt democracy. Okay, fine. Well, if that's true, I don't think it is. But then why aren't we concerned with these groups that are still out there, by the way, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and other groups that had as their purpose to stop the swearing in,
or Jerry,
attack on democracy.
Let's take it even. Let's go get even closer to the 2020 election, right? How about the folks who were rioting in Lafayette Square?
Sure, and breached the White House.
Sure. What do you think would have happened? Right. Go ahead.
But I want to get back to the original point.
Sure.
Which is. What's his name? Boyd Rutherford is a liar.
Yeah.
Because if he had a moral problem with Dan Cox, he would have double the moral problem with Wes Moore and the Democrats, who also attack democracy.
Well, and more to the point, if they had such a moral problem with Dan Cox, they would have done far more to make sure that Kelly Schultz got the nomination. And done more to, that is the thing.
Well, Kelly Schultz should have done more she should have done more to.
Well, sure, but I mean, but my point, in all of this is, and you have been far more critical over the years of Larry Hogan than I have, and I say that as a compliment, Jerry. One of the things that Jerry has criticized and long time criticized Larry Hogan about. Let me sort of take a step back. When Larry Hogan ran in 2014 for the governorship for the first time around, he did it having spent at least a year earlier building up a grassroots network, something called Change Maryland, which is frankly something that I had talked not about Change Maryland, but I talked about a concept about it. I'm not saying Larry Hogan took my idea, but multiple people were having the same idea at the same time. The idea was to create a grassroots network, present an alternative vision for how Maryland can be, and run on that. Larry Hogan gets elected, and then nothing is done with Change Maryland over the next 8 years.
Nothing.
Whether it was to build the Republican majority in both houses of the Maryland legislature, or to bring people to Annapolis to support the governor's efforts, Change Maryland was a one and done deal. And had they kept it and sustained it for 8 years, then they could have turned around and used it to help Kelly Schultz run before she became governor. Right. What should have happened is Kelly Schultz should have resigned from being Maryland Secretary of Commerce, and then taken over Change Maryland and built up a grassroots network that way. But they didn't do it that way.
No, and again, Change Maryland could have been used, to your point, to break the Democrats' super majority, veto-proof majority in Annapolis. Look, friends of ours, at the time it was Red Maryland, I had Brian Griffiths on my radio show, and I was critical of the governor. Yeah. And I asked Brian straight out, why should I vote for Larry Hogan? Like, what's his legacy? Like, what's the difference? I could just stay home. I'll vote down ticket. I'll vote for the delegates. I'll vote for Congress. But why should I bother voting for Larry Hogan? And what he said to me made sense. He said for two reasons. Number one, he's still a check on Annapolis. He can't stop everything, but he can stop some things. And Brian was right about that. The second thing was, he said that Larry Hogan is prepared. He's been preparing for this fight over the redistricting, over gerrymandered congressional districts. And he said, Jerry, if we can get a fair congressional map, if we can get a fair legislative map, not that Republicans will get the majority in either the state house or in the congressional delegation, but it would be fairer. Instead of being one member of Congress, Republican, there might be two or maybe three. And in the legislature, we talk all the time about Maryland and other states, the congressional delegation being gerrymandered. In the state of Maryland, the state districts, are also gerrymandered to give Democrats a massive advantage. But here's my point. He didn't do it. And maybe if he had changed Maryland, maybe if he had built a network, maybe he could have done it. Yeah. And so again, I'll say this to all our friends who are no labels, moderate Republican, Larry Hogan should run for president. Larry Hogan has done nothing to make Maryland a better place that's lasting. There's absolutely zero legacy. Larry Hogan, the first 6 months of a Westmore administration in the state of Maryland, it would be as if Larry Hogan never existed.
Right. And it's one of those things where, and then he squandered so much.
He's still squandering. He has 60% approval rating even now. Imagine 2 weeks out. There are still 2 weeks. Imagine if Larry Hogan says, you know what, I have a change of heart. I looked at his tax plan. I looked at his education plan. I looked at his crime plan. And Dan Cox can govern and lead this state. And,
it gets down to this idea, right? If Larry Hogan wants to run for president, the most presidential thing he could do would be to turn around and say, you know something, we may disagree on issues of style. We may disagree on Donald Trump, but Dan Cox is right on these other things.
Andrew, but I have a Larry Hogan, for you. You're right. When Mitt Romney got the nomination in 2012, he wasn't my choice, but what we were told, what were conservatives told to do with Mitt Romney?
Well, he was better than the alternative.
Yeah, vote for him.
And also right. And then he because that when Paul Ryan was still considered a nominal conservative, they put Ryan on the ticket, and that was supposed to help assuage us there. And the reality, of course, would be, would Romney have been better than a second term of Obama? Sure,
of course,
he would have, right?
But the point is that when a moderate gets the nomination for Congress, for state delegate, for president,
we're told to suck it up.
We're told to rally. And then here's an example. Again, Dan Cox on the issues. He is very mainstream GOP. And this governor, Larry Hogan, and again,
this guy,
we don't mean to be
trust
provincial.
This guy.
We don't mean to be provincial, but here's my prediction. No Labels has already set the motion in progress to be on the ballot. What they've said is that if Trump gets the nomination in 2024, we're going to run someone against run against him. I don't believe that. I believe they're going to run someone regardless, and I think it's going to be Larry Hogan regardless. Larry Hogan, here's my prediction. Larry Hogan will be on the ballot in 2024, but as a no labels standard bearer.
I think that's probably right. Or so you don't think he'd go down the road and try to get the Libertarian nomination?
No, I think he'll run as no labels because frankly, the no labels have better infrastructure than the Libertarian.
I think that's true. But I also think that the Libertarians have now wisened up under the new Libertarian leadership. And they're not going to.
And again, this is very interesting.
Hold on. Let me
I think this is the real reason why Larry Hogan is not running for. This is the real reason why Larry Hogan isn't supporting Dan Cox. Yeah. It's not because of a moral issue or a character issue. It's because this will be his bona fides to run as an independent in 2024.
Yeah, that
or part of it.
That makes
part
sense.
Of his bona fides. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. No, I was just going to say is that it essentially the Libertarian Party is under new leadership, and I don't think they're going to allow the party to be used as a refuge for people who are rejects from the other two parties in terms of their national candidates.
But again, I'll say this: the Libertarian Party is still a bunch of rejects, regardless if they have William Weld as their. Remember, Evan
McMuffin, yes,
is a libertarian who was endorsed by Democrats.
By the way, it's kind of hard to be a libertarian and be a former CIA case officer or whatever the hell he did for the CIA.
The libertarians are a threat to democracy.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jerry.
Good night, folks.
Good night, folks. Hey, so let me. I wanted to share this with you. Here is as I was talking about the Animaniacs. Oh, good Lord. Let me do this.
Now, can our listeners hear this?
Yeah, they will be able to hear this. Hold on.
All right, very good.
Because I want to share sound as well. Here.
Ooh, a giant Pez dispenser. Want one? Please.
Stop playing with my bust!
Good night, everybody.
And give me back my paperweight.
Okay, but you have to wait a while. Good night, everybody. You're a what?
A pianist.
I never watched this.
Good night, everybody.
You never watched this?
Never.
Conjugate.
I'm seeing it for the first time right
I
now.
never even kissed a girl.
No. It's easy. I'll conjugate with you.
Good night, everybody. There you go.
The point is, I told Jerry. Let me turn that off. I stopped it.
Never. My goodness.
Never.
This is like you watching She-Hulk and telling me it was good.
Did you watch it? You didn't like it?
I started it, and also I saw a tweet by our friend Christian Toto, and he just said he completely gave up on it. It was ridiculous.
No, it gets better, and the ending is great, and I loved it. It was fantastic. But my point is, the Animaniacs. So this is what I was telling Jerry.
Have a character that looks like Fetterman.
Anytime there was a. Is there a character on there that looks like Fetterman?
Well, I don't know why I'm so confused as to why you showed it then.
No, the point is that it's the good night, everybody. I because when Jerry and I were talking yesterday.
Oh, yes.
Good night, everybody. Yes. Every time that they would say, so immediately when Fetterman gets up there on camera at this debate, says good night, everybody. I immediately thought about the Animaniacs and Yakko Warner saying good night, everybody. Actually, because this is a good segue into the end of the show. I like She-Hulk, but the best show on TV, by the way, Jerry, and I know you're a fan of Paul Reiser.
By the way, I didn't like Reboot either.
No,
it's not good.
Oh, I loved it.
I watched the first 6 episodes, 5 episodes.
No, there are only 8 episodes.
No, I'm sorry. I watched the entire thing.
No,
and it was horrible.
Oh, I loved it.
But why?
I thought it was funny. I thought the writing was really good. I love Paul Reiser.
Paul Reiser is great in it.
Yes,
but it's not. It's bad.
I love
TV.
You didn't like the writers' room.
It's just bad TV.
No, I didn't. I disagree wholeheartedly.
Not one laugh moment.
Oh no. I laughed hysterically. I thought it was terrific. Are you going to go see Wakanda Forever?
No.
No, are you done? Are you done with Marvel?
I'm done with Marvel. Yeah, I'm done with Marvel.
Are you done? But you're also not going to see Black Adam, I take it. Are you done with superhero movies?
Well, Black Adam looks so stupid.
Yes.
And a friend of mine reviewed it. A radio person reviewed it and said that on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of effects of the wow factor in terms of the movie, it's a 10. The story is a 1.
Yeah. No, I have no interest in seeing that. We're gonna see. I'm sure we're gonna see.
What is again? Like, why these obscure characters now?
Well, remember that the approach that DC is taking is very different than Marvel. Marvel is all directed from the top. Kevin Feige's in charge, and which is all an element.
Well, the DC movies have been terrible. Wonder Woman 1984 was maybe the worst movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was awful. But my point is this.
Like Reboot.
Also, by the way, anything that Kristen Wiig is in is just terrible. But the Kristen Wiig Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, but she was in that one movie with the Martian.
The Martian. She's okay in The Martian.
But yeah, but that movie was good.
Yes, love.
You and I usually agree on this stuff.
So, but my point is, so with the DC universe, apparently anybody can come to if the folks at Warner Brothers like the idea for the DC movie, they'll let you make it. And it doesn't have to have any connection to any other story.
Yeah.
So which is why you had the weird. Why you have 3 different Jokers, and they all go in different directions.
Yeah.
But that's.
Well, I have no idea where the Marvel thing is now.
Well, right. I mean, it's funny because what I was kind of hoping is that after, I guess we got Quantumania coming out, which looks good. Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm hoping there is some opportunity to resurrect.
Is Paul Rudd in that? I go see that because Paul Rudd's.
It's Paul Rudd. It's Paul Rudd and Michelle Pfeiffer, who no longer looks like Michelle Pfeiffer. She actually looks like Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, she's the mother, right?
Yeah, she's.
Is Michael Douglas in this one?
Michael Douglas. They're all in it.
I'll pay to see.
And then there's apparently a Guardian. Not apparently, there is a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special.
Holiday special.
Holiday special. It's going to be on Disney Plus.
They're getting Marvel's messing up. They have all these damn shows. You can't keep up. And I think, like, again, you like She-Hulk. I think She-Hulk just makes Marvel unwatchable.
No, I don't. I enjoyed it. I thought it was clever. I thought it was interesting. But what I want them to do is, the problem is, and it gets down to what you were just talking about, which is when you lose the two most interesting characters in Marveldom, Captain America and Iron Man, then it's something is very much lost. I did like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Did you like that? Did you ever watch that?
Never watched it.
All right. So I liked that. And I was
part of my problem too is that Marvel's now like Disney, we're getting these, these non-binary, we're getting gender identity, and I just can't abide by any of that stuff.
Well, I mean, certainly in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you don't get any of that.
Well, I didn't see it, so, but it's everywhere anyway.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's the thing. Well, actually, let's talk about this for a couple of minutes, because I don't believe you are a Broadway show kind of a guy.
Really?
But I had this.
What makes you think that?
I don't know. But I had this conversation with somebody, because that's the in thing to do right now with everything in Broadway is that they revive these musicals. Now the Music Man, which is about to close, they went old school with Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster. But on the revival of Stephen Sondheim's company, they gender bent it, and the main character, the protagonist, Bobby, is now Bobby with an I, and she's a woman.
See, I don't mind that. Look, I don't mind being interesting.
But the point is they're doing it with everything, Jerry. So now
what really bothers me though isn't the well, this is a traditionally male role, now it's female. I don't even care that, like in Hamilton, that you have persons of color playing.
I don't mind that either.
Playing the founding fathers and such. I don't care. What I care is when they put this gender identity, transgendered nonsense, and it's preachy, and there's a religiosity.
Right. It's the concept of you will be made to care. But my point in all of this is there is a production of 1776 that is all women. And it's a whole gender bending, and it's a modern dress version of it.
So it's Georgette Washington.
Well, no, I think it's still George Washington, but George Washington is played by a woman, and apparently it's just it is.
So that's dumb.
I've got a problem. By the way, do you ever see it?
You have a problem with Andrew? You have a problem with that because it's dumb.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yes. And
I mean, do 1776 with women, but
like 12 angry
Alexandria
men,
Hamilton.
12 angry men, I wouldn't have had a problem if 12 angry men became 12 angry women.
Right.
And I don't mean that in any kind of a snarky way. I just it would be fine. 1776 is a little different.
The thing is, 1776, our founding fathers weren't dancing and singing. So that's ridiculous too. I mean,
well, of course, but on the other hand,
if we're gonna have George Washington sing,
fun little facts.
It could be Georgette.
Well, George Washington isn't actually in. So you've never seen 1776, have you?
I have. I forget.
Okay.
What's his name?
As far as musicals go,
is in it, right? What's his name?
What?
Who's the guy that?
It's John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin.
The actor. The
original cast was William Daniels as John Adams, and Henry Da Silva as Ben Franklin, and then the guy who played the White Shadow played Thomas Jefferson.
There's no Washington in it?
No, because Washington wasn't at Washington is a figure behind the scenes. Washington wasn't at the Continental Congress, with the debates of the Declaration of Independence. He was out in the field fighting the revolution. So the Continental Congress receives dispatches from him in the field, and they are complaining about him being depressing. All of his messages to Congress are dour, and he's like, my men are a rabble. I have no money. We have no food.
It sounds like me now.
Yes. It's instead of it being Eeyore-ish Jerry, it's George Washington.
Biden inflation. I have no money. My family's a rabble.
But my point, I was going to say this. So weirdly enough, fun little factoid, Jerry.
Yeah.
Is that as far as musicals go, I think 1776 holds a record for having the longest stretch within a musical of having no musical numbers happen. It's like 45. There's like 45 minutes out of this musical where there's no music.
Elvis Presley's last movie too.
Yes.
I think it's technically a musical, but I think there's only one musical number.
So Jerry,
I'm gonna stand up for a second, Andrew, because I gotta get something over here. But continue the show. Continue.
Well, there you go. I'm gonna speak your praises because we're gonna sum up. So
sum up, but I need to go over here for 1 second.
That's fine. Go over there for a second, Jerry. I appreciate that. Just so you all know, part of the reason why, first of all, I want to thank you all for your continued listenership. We've surpassed a major milestone in terms of downloads a couple of weeks ago. I need you all to do more, though. If you are listening to the show, I need you to let your friends know, your family members know. I need you to let everybody know that you're listening to the show and where you're listening to it. So whether you're watching it on YouTube or whether or not you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Transistor or wherever, let folks know about the podcast. Leave a review. But that helps us down in the long run.
Forgive me.
No worries. And I apologize for the last couple of weeks. We've had the bonus episodes, which are good. Jerry's taken on a couple of new responsibilities. He's doing more for the folks at Real Clear. He's now been named editor of Real Clear Policy, which is a huge feather in his cap. We're very, very proud. I'm very proud of my friend for doing this. Also, with the end of the baseball season, Jerry's doing more broadcasting on WBAL.
I tell you one thing,
yes.
My most recent show, and again, go to WBAL, go to the website, go to podcast, go to Jerry Rogers. But the show I did this week, just yesterday, is en fuego. It's it's hilarious. It's everything you want people to say, and they're afraid to say it, and I said it.
That's good, and that's the way it should be. It's what I've always told you that I think you ought to do. On my end, the Lunch Hour podcast is up there and it's out there. We're in episode, I think it's 5 now. Most recent episode, Congressman Andy Biggs. Last week for Free Speech Week, we talked to Heather Lauer from People United for Privacy. So go and check that out as well. We will be back next week with a new episode prior to the election. Jerry and I will give our picks, our predictions for what's going to happen on election day. And we probably are going to do something on election night, Jerry, aren't we?
We should.
Yeah.
And when's election night?
It's 2 weeks from this last Tuesday, 2 days ago.
Holy cow.
We are right up on the precipice here. Hey, real quick, before I let you go.
Is election day like Christmas for you?
No.
Oh, it is. There's a certain kind of vibe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do want to do something that night. Halloween, what are you guys doing? I mean, how many kids do you usually get?
It's number one, the neighborhood. Well, the last couple of years, because of COVID, it's been less, but we have a very good neighborhood for Halloween. Lots of visits to the house, neighbors. I have a neighbor up the street who puts a fire outside, and the neighbors kind of gather. Erica does her Halloween happy hour. You see, long story short, when we were kids living in New York and New Jersey, we would trick or treat on our way home from school.
Wow.
Like, I mean, early, like 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Wow.
We were trick or treating. Oh yeah. And we went all night.
Okay.
Yeah. But however, we moved to Maryland, and around 6 o'clock or 5:30, the girls were little.
Yeah.
They were like 3 and 1 or 4 and 2. And they went to bed at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we went to a neighbor's house, and she yelled at us.
Yeah, because you were too early.
We were too early. And we're like, what? It's 5:30. What do you mean it's too early? So anyway, what Erica did was we have a new tradition over the last 22 years or 20 years. And that is Erica's Halloween happy hour.
Nice.
And so what we do is she makes all these foods, but it's Hollywood themed. So
nice.
It's meatballs with olives in it, like for eyeballs.
Sure,
and
of course.
There's whatever. And it's all
it's
really good. And then we invite people over, and
nice.
we have adults can have an adult beverage, and the kids, we take turns to go trick or treating and all the rest. So yeah, it's a big, and my kids love it. By the way, did you ever see that movie? Is it called Before Sunrise? Ethan Hawke?
Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know it.
So Bridget and her boyfriend Jack are going as that couple in the movie.
So
but again, that's like a Langer thing. We are
going to a Halloween party on Friday night.
What are you dressing as?
My wife. We're going as Dr. Frederick Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein and his assistant Inga.
Well, very similar. Erica and I are I'm going as the Fetterman.
Okay.
No, I'm not doing that.
I told Jerry to do this. But we're gonna go over on Monday.
I don't get dressed up.
Neither do I. For the most part, we're going to this party though.
You're gonna put little things in your over here?
No, because remember, I'm going as the doctor. So I actually have a blonde Gene Wilder wig that I'm gonna wear.
You gotta.
I'll take pictures, and then I've got a name tag that's gonna say Dr. Frederick Frankenstein.
Excellent, I love
on it. MD PhD. And Monday, so we now go and do Halloween at my in-laws' house. I put up a bunch of inflatables at my father-in-law, my in-laws' house. I bought a new inflatable, Jerry.
Yeah.
It's a 10-foot tall Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
You missed what I said.
What'd you say?
You said I bought a new inflatable, and I said, "What's her name?"
What's her name? Yes. Her name is.
Sorry, Mom.
Yes.
Joke.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
See, that's the context on the Animaniacs. They would say something off color.
Good night, everyone.
And anyway,
I get it.
Good night, everybody.
Yes.
All right, Jerry. So Sunday. If it's Sundays, it must be Jerry.
If it's Sunday, it's Jerry. We're going to do the Liberty Update. We're going to do the Jerry's Just Right. It'll be 3 hours of rock and roll, baby.
Yes. And what do you want people to do, my friend?
Find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm.
Have a great week, everybody. Have a happy Halloween. Have fun, please. And by all means, stay safe.